Denise Roach. I'm calling Denise Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clear something up. The Greens' position on this bill has changed from time to time, and with the introduction of the SOP 175 in the Minister's name, we have revised our position. And if that SOP passes, then we will be supporting the bill. Well done. Now, the reason we're doing that is because we see that as an act of good faith. And the reason we see it as an act of good faith is because some people in this House may cast their minds back and may remember that in 2010, in October 2010, the Greens had a members' bill in the name of Catherine Delahunty pulled, which was, it was called the Human Rights Disability Commissioner Amendment Bill. And that bill essentially set out that the Human Rights Commission would have a designated disability commissioner, because we don't actually agree with the New Zealand First Speaker who suggests that, that you can do everything, because generalisation means that specific attention wanders, and that's what we need if we are to address some of the issues facing the disability community. Now, Catherine Delahunty's bill was, as well as creating a designated disability commissioner, it also spelled out the specific criteria for the appointment and an extensive list of the functions that that disability commissioner would undertake. And it was developed in extensive consultation with the disability community. And one of the things that the disability community said that they really wanted from a disability commissioner was that that person has to have experienced having a disability, and they have to actively engage with different communities or persons living with impairments, and that they needed to be an advocate for their interests, rights and well-beings, and crucially to assist the government to work towards the implementation for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now, this was all part of a bill that was pulled from the ballot. But when the government said in 2010 that they were looking to introduce legislation that would enshrine in legislation the position of a Disabilities Commissioner, in good faith, we pulled that bill. So you can imagine we were very, very disappointed when this bill came to the House. And it wasn't actually at all like what we had hoped for. In fact, it looked like it was set to disestablish the specific positions and just have them covered by broad portfolio roles. And that has been our major concern all the way through, that the Equal Opportunities Commissioner and that the Race Relations Commissioner and the work of disabilities would basically be portfolios rather than specific commission roles. The other thing that we found a bit difficult, well, extremely difficult, about the introduction of this bill, as it is written, as it went to the first reading, was that it did look like it was restructuring the Human Rights Commission by stealth. So, sir, we certainly believe that we still need designated commissioners working within the Human Rights Commission with the Chief Commissioner, and that they are specifically addressing the issues of each of those areas. We still need an Equal Employment Opportunities Commissioner. We just have to look at the whole situation with the Christine Bartlett equal pay case, where the Crown is currently negotiating around what the principles are to ensure that women's work is valued at the same amount as traditionally male occupations. So there's still a pay gap of between 11.8% and 14% for the average hourly rate for women workers. So we haven't achieved pay equity yet. Women are still facing barriers to leadership in the workplace, both in the public and private sector, with only around about 43% of women in senior positions at board level. And how can we know these facts if we haven't got someone keeping their eye on it? The role of these commissioners is to advocate in these areas, and we would not necessarily know this information if we didn't have someone set set to do it. We also need a specific Race Relations Commissioner, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, thank you. We need a specific Race Relations Commissioner, sir. The Federation of Multicultural Councils of New Zealand rightly pointed out in their submission, and I quote, that the genericization of mainstreaming, end quote, of positions that are dedicated to race relation functions mean that the functions are diminished and absorbed, which is why they stated that it's therefore all the more important that the designation of Race Relations Commissioner itself not be disestablished. So we know from their report that they released last year, Our Multicultural Future, that non-Pākehā New Zealanders still continue to face massive discrimination in New Zealand, particularly in the areas of education and employment, and with people who have the requisite qualifications and experience facing difficulties in finding commensurate employment and having their previous employment overseas recognised. The 2012 Statistics New Zealand report revealed that 187,000 New Zealanders had experienced racial discrimination. Nearly 1 in 5 Asian New Zealanders have also reportedly experienced racism in the last 12 months. And that harassment, sir, that ranges from a variety of bad behaviour, including workplace harassment, street catcalling, applying for work, or dealing with the police. So it's clear that New Zealanders have a lot more work to do, and that a specific Race Relations Commissioner is part of that. Sir, we also support, and we specifically need, the Disabilities Commissioner, and that is the major reason why we are supporting this bill is because it creates that for the first time in legislation. And we need a Disabilities Commissioner because the shocking 60% of unemployment rate among people with disabilities, because disabled people are also less likely to have a formal qualification, with 67% holding a school or tertiary qualification compared to 85% of adults with no disabilities. 64% of disabled adults have an annual gross income of $30,000 or lower, compared with 45% of the abled community. So overall, it's clear that in this country we aren't doing more to enable New Zealanders with disabilities to fully participate in everything that our country has to offer, and that's why we need a Disability Commissioner to advocate for that and to make it happen. Thank you.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.